Alter your own clothes and save a bundle. Here's how. To take in or let out a suit coat, whether it's a man's or a woman's, here's what you do. Now what I'm talking about is slimming the middle area down perhaps through the hem of that suit coat. Or alternatively, letting it out for better comfort. We begin by looking at the back of the suit coat. We look at where the vents are and we pin them closed. We make sure the subject has closed his or hers jacket in the front by buttoning it down in front so that it's closely fitting against the body. Now, again, where the vents are, they get pinned closed, and we take in the seams that are not vented. So let's say that these two seams were vented. Where would we take it in? This middle seam. That's where we begin. On the back, choosing between 2 or 1 of 3 seams. Okay? While the subject is in the jacket, you pin out the excess down the sides. You try to pin as evenly as possible. It's not always possible. Once the subject is out of the jacket, evaluate the 2 seams and even them up by repinning. What I mean by that is these 2 pins should be similar. One's a little less than the other. I feel like it needs to be repositioned to match the other. Simply eyeball and or measure for uniformity, and then you're ready. Here's another instance where I feel like it should be less to match this side. Keep doing it until you're very comfortable with what you see pin-wise. Remove the vent pins anytime you want now. Take your chalk and begin marking. This will be your sewing line. Do this front and back. On the back side, marking is a little different. I just make a couple of dots on either side of the pin. Here's the finished marking on one side. Also, when you were originally marking the outside of the jacket, you could mark the lining at the same time. It's just that simple. Again, you may have to transfer these markings to the underside of the lining to see it when you're at the seam, but that's what you can do. Having marked both sides, or if it occurred that you were doing the center seam, now it's time to flip it over and deal with the lining. It's time to detach it. So go ahead and detach it a good ways on either side of the seam that you're dealing with, which is this seam. That's so you have enough room to get in there in the tight quarters that it is. There's usually a little connection here at the seam. Get that apart. And that's about right. If you have to detach more, in order to get in there and handle it, then do. Okay, so the object here is to get in the tight quarters all the way up to the shoulder blade and mark your seam for taking in. Or, as the case may be, to let out. Now this particular suit does not have a lot of excess to let out. Many suits do. Sometimes you just don't know until you get in there how much there is. Sometimes you can feel from the outside how much there might be. You might be able to feel it. At any rate, if you were letting out and could, and you still could a bit, I mean any increment helps, right? You would run your stitching as close to the edge as possible, which in this case would just not be very far out. Probably only halfway in the existing seam allowance would you go in order to let this out for more comfort. Okay? But we are taking in this instance, and so we know we want to mark our seam. Well, the next question is, how do you do that when the markings are on the outside of the jacket? Good question. There are two ways to handle this. What I'm going to show you might want to do when you're a little more adept at this, but I call it pinch and pin. I'm simply going to pinch my marks together. Remember where the solid line on one side and the two little dots on the other side? Pinch them together with your hand inside. Pinch them together what seems right. Flip it wrong side out. Let your thumbnail be the guide. Pin it. And flip it back out and see if it's right. Yeah, darn close. I might adjust it just a little bit. You can do it this way all up and down your line. Pinch and pin. Down at the very bottom here. Get a grasp. Flip it around, pin it. Let's see if I made it. I feel good about that. I might adjust it a little bit. Okay, so do that all the way up and down your pin line. As you get to the shoulder blade, yes, naturally it's going to be a little more challenging because that's the tighter quarters. But you're up here at your angle, pinch it. And it's just going to be a mere amount. We know that. I like it. So continue with your other marks until you have them pinched and pinned, if you're going to do it that way. If not, I'll show you the other way. The other way is to simply transfer markings. Stab your pin into the white chalk mark, turn it wrong side out, and mark it. Do that all the way up and down the line. You can opt to just do it on one side, the side that you're going to see when you stitch, or you can do it on both sides. I'm opting to just mark on the side that's going to be facing me for stitching. And I think I'll actually pin like this, doubly punctured. So that I can then make 3 points of reference with the chalk. When I remove the pin and then go back and look, this is what we've got. Just head from chalk mark to chalk mark. All right, all sewn. Now we'd like to accomplish the same thing on the lining. You want to take in at the bottom of the lining as an exact amount to the jacket as you can manage, so that it matches up when you go to reattach the hem. Trim seam, but not too much in case it needs to be let out again in the future, and take out old stitching. Then we'll prepare to press. Pressing is infinitely easier if you have a sleeve board on which you can just leave one layer under the other and have a narrow area yet flat to press. I'm just going to feel through here and have my lining, both parts of the seam facing this way, like so. I didn't even trim here because I'm simply going to press it to the side. The reason we trim the suit part is because we need to press that seam flat open. So start out with the easier task, which is the lining. Press it to the side. And I mean toward the center, which on this side is going this way. On the jacket itself, still using the sleeve board if you have one, it helps to press out the old seam first, as flatly as you can get it. Spread it out on the sleeve board. And press it flat open. I find it hard to do that all the way up inside in the tight quarters, so I eventually turn it over and then I just kind of spread it with my fingers underneath, get all touchy-feely with it, and then continue on that way. Can be a little slow going, but you'll get a nice press. I'm just finger pressing it open from the underside and capturing it with the iron until I get all the way up to the shoulder blade. And sometimes just by sliding it across the sleeve board it will open up, but not necessarily. Sewing being ever so much tactile as it is visual, this is what we do. We feel our way along. Okay, smooth going on the pressing, and now you can see there's a more pronounced curve to the shoulder area, and in through the middle is much more slimmed now. Time to reattach the lining. So do a great press job on the seam that you just fixed. Get that back into shape. Same for the lining. Match it back up to where it was. And now you're ready to hand stitch it back into place. All stitched now, hey? So let's just give it one more press. All done. Good job.